Hi, Malcolm. Thanks for joining us on the HSE Edge. Yeah, I know there is a big time difference between I'm in Montreal, you're in Paris, or
Yep.
are you in like UK?
No, I'm definitely in Paris.
Yeah, around like 5-6 hours difference right now with the like changing time, saving daylight savings. But thanks for making it the time.
No problem at all. No problem at
All
all.
right, Malcolm, I've looked at through your LinkedIn profile, and there is always this phrase, the hummingbird approach and safety. So, could you tell us a little bit more about the approach and how is it effective?
Wow. Yeah. No, so um I don't know if you know, but there is a story called the Hummingbird story, which dates back to like the Incan times in Latin America. I don't know if you've ever heard it. And it's all about a little bird, the little bird being the hummingbird. And there's a big forest fire, and all the animals rush out, and all the including obviously the hummingbird, and the animals are just watching as the fire burns and all the rest of it. But the hummingbird goes to the water, picks up a drop of water, puts on the fire, goes backwards and forwards, and forwards. And eventually the other animals say, and this is how the story goes, the other animals say, well, look, you're having no impact. You're so small. You're insignificant, right?
Yeah,
And the little hummingbird, without stopping, just says, well, at least I'm doing the best that I can, and I'm trying to do something because we had our friends, the animals that couldn't get out or whatever. And he keeps on going, keeps on going. And eventually, the other animals, this is how I see the story. The other animals then they all pitch in, they start taking water out of the river, putting it on the fire, and they eventually put the fire out. I mean, that kind of story is all about environmental disaster because of the fire,
yeah,
the potential for pollution. There's the health impact of smoke, which, as you know, is carcinogenic. And on top of that, there's this idea that you know, there's the other people that were left behind, the other animals that were left behind. And what it shows is a number of things. It's A, we should all do the best that we can. The
definitely.
hummingbird showed a leadership of care, right?
Yeah,
And even though he was the smallest animal around, his influence of leadership on the others was quite significant. So
yeah,
so it reminds us that it doesn't matter where you are in the hierarchy and what your title is. What matters is can you influence, and that is what a true leader is. So within L'Oreal, this whole story has become the story, the symbol with the hummingbird behind everything that we do. And it's all about saying, we're not going to change the world today. We're not
yeah,
going to create the best culture in the world or have the best performance today, but we need to be on that journey. And every incremental change along that journey is important. And even though as an individual, we may not have a big impact on corporate culture, or we don't think so, well, corporate culture and health and safety culture comes from people, the people that are in the organization. Therefore, we all are significant, right? And that's the kind of story we say. Is it having an impact in L'Oreal? I think it is, not in the sense that it's a program, right? But in the sense that it gives a mindset. It gives it and it gives an icon, a belief that behind it, everybody sees the hummingbird and they know what it counts for. They may not remember what's in our policy, our EHS policy,
yeah,
but they remember what the hummingbird stands for. And it's that symbol behind it. And actually, between you and everybody else listening, it actually unites the organization behind a common goal, right?
yeah.
I mean, there are other things about it as well. And I'll just to finish it about is it having an impact or not? I visited a site last week, right,
Mhm.
in the Nordics. I'd not visited them for 12 years. And I walk into a room, it's the training room. And there in the training room on the wall is the biggest hummingbird you've ever seen, a picture, right?
Wow.
And next to it, they've written, I do, I'm doing the best I can, right?
Yeah,
That is the power of symbols, of icons, etc. So it's not a program. Is it
yeah,
having an impact? Yes, it is.
yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, the power of storytelling, like, if you bring concepts and, like, put them, like, in a nice, compelling story that has, like, maybe a moral or something, people can relate to it, and, I mean, it gets ingrained in them, so I think that's, like, a powerful way to convey messages, whether it be, like, in safety or other things, but it's something that I guess leaders should do, like, try to simplify things, use stories, and I think stories, like, resonate with people all the time, so, yeah, props to you for that.
Yeah, no, and if I can, I remember when we first started on this, I thought there was it could be a powerful branding potentially, but I was very nervous about telling the story in front of a lot of other senior executives in L'Oréal
Yeah,
about a hummingbird and a forest, right? I mean, are they going to think I'm treating them like children? Are they going to relate to it? Uh, and actually, between you, if the story's delivered in the right way, right?
yeah,
It doesn't matter if it's a children's story or not. It can be inspirational for others.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Uh,
I watched, you had, like, a TED Talk like, I watched it, and you
yep.
in that talk, you said, like, your mother had a very, great influence. So, how did her influence shape your leadership style and health and safety? And, like, yeah, so if you could tell us a little bit.
Yeah, no, yeah. Can you still hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, just to let you know, I mean, I think for us all, our mothers and our parents have a big influence, right?
yeah,
And I must admit, at the time, I wasn't really aware of the influence my mum was having, especially on the way she was, I was gonna say, coaching me to be kind. I mentioned in the TED talk about opening doors for people when they're walking behind me, or just saying thank you, and those what we call in English, the P's and Q's, B's and thank yous, as it says. And she in herself had a big heart as well, and she would always go out to, try and help with the local churches, giving her time for free, and even though I never appreciated being dragged along, to kinda help out when I was little, I didn't. Oh, yeah. But I realize now and I realized later that that was actually having quite an influence on me. Even though I disliked it, I saw mum helping others, right? Giving her time freely. And she had no money, right? And we didn't have much money at all. And mum occasionally would go, and I again never realized, working on the land at the right season just to earn a few extra pounds, a few extra dollars, etc., just so that she could help both myself and my sister. But you just take it for granted as children, right?
yeah,
And you don't realize how that your experience with your parents actually mold you. And I think a lot of people, I think I'm quite human. I have quite a bit of empathy, I think, right? And that comes from my mum and the way I went 2 places with her, and I saw her
mhm,
interacting. So she's had a major, like us all, she's had a major influence, I think, on who I am today. I think it's incredible. But so has my dad, but in a different way. But my mum really was out to wanting to make a difference, but she had no money. And in the Hummingbird TED Talk, I said, at the end of the day, my mum didn't realize it at the time, but she wasn't insignificant. She really was for me, as I talk about now, a real hummingbird.
yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, as you mentioned, like, when we I guess when we were kids, like, we always, like, or don't appreciate that, like, the effort that our parents put in. Now, like, I've become a dad, like, 2 years ago,
Congratulations. Wow, great.
thanks. Yeah, so so my daughter, like, so now I understand, like, better, like, how, like, care about your kids, like, you think only, like, to, to give them the best that you can do, and, and you hope, like, in the future that, like, those ideals and, like, things, like, will, they will grow up with them and they will, like, make them a better person, so
Yeah.
yeah.
And also when you have children and as they grow, and maybe this has started already for you, you actually realize how much you did not appreciate your parents and how much they sacrificed and gave up for you, which when we're, young children or even teenagers, maybe take for granted kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah,
But it's when you have your own children that you realize what your parents actually gave up for you.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, like you emphasize the importance of culture and safety performance. So, what are the key indicators that a safety culture within an organization is genuinely sustainable and effective?
Oh, that is the $1,000,000 question, isn't it, eh?
Yeah.
It's a $1,000,000 question. I mean, we'll put it straight out there, start off with, it's obviously we're not talking about lagging indicators. We're not talking about total incident rate or anything like that. However, what what a lot of people have to realize with those, very often for the top people, the CEOs, the external stakeholders, right, that rate organizations for shareholders, etc., they very often only focus on
A little bit.
the lagging indicators.
Yeah.
And as a result, a company still has to focus on have the lagging indicators out there. But when you're talking about culture and things like that, there's a number of things. There's not just one leading indicator or one single program. In L'Oreal, we believe, I believe, that your license to operate is all about risk management. First thing, actually, foundation. Don't even talk about culture or anything else. If you're not in compliance with the law, whether the law adds value or not is irrelevant. You still have to comply with the law, right?
Yeah.
And then, second thing you have to do is make sure that you've got your risk management programs in place, starting with where you can have a fatality. Right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, you've got to make sure your risk management's in place as well. Once you've got that solid foundation of credibility to move forward. So for that, you need to have indicators that drive your risk management programs, like whatever they may be in an organization. And they change from organizations to organizations. So I could tell you what we do in L'Oreal, and another company could say, "Oh, well, we have risk management programs and we don't have the same leading indicators, but they
Yeah.
work for us." And that's fine,
Mm.
right? After that, you have to drive in our with our experience, what you have to drive is visible, felt leadership, right? It's all about, it's not being, "Oh, yeah, I'm a leader because I tell you I'm a leader and I want you to work safely," when the people know you're not being sincere, right?
Yeah.
You need to feel the sincerity of the leaders, of the managers, that when they talk about you and they look you in the eyes and talk about your health, your safety, your well-being, that they mean it, right? And that at the right moment, they will with you walk the talk, which you've heard before. Walk the talk on its own is not sufficient. Do you know why?
Oh, okay. Why?
Be- because we all have our limits. If you go to maybe some people somewhere in the world and offer them $10 million to chop off their hand, they may just do that. Because what they can do with 10 million and their families and all the rest of it is incredible, and it's all family first. So you have to be able to walk the talk at a moment of truth. When you have to make that decision between productivity and safety, and you've only got a certain amount of budget, CapEx to
Yeah.
spend, you have to make a decision. If you don't spend the money on the productivity, for example, maybe the business is gonna fail.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't spend the money on safety, maybe you're gonna be out of compliance with the law. It's not an ea there's not an easy situation, but you
It's
have
not.
to know where what your moment of truth is. What is the line you can't cross? You have to be honest with yourselves. And in L'Oreal, we have programs called Visible for Leadership that put our people on the shop floor, our managers on the shop floor, talking about the team's safety. Not talking about the machines,
Yeah.
talking about the safety and the value of their safety. And that aspect of visible felt leadership, of which we have a number of programs, we drive through KPIs, leading
Yeah.
indicators, right? Um, the they are based on what was in many years ago called behavioral based safety, right? But there were some studies done that said that the biggest behavioral change that you need to make is not with employees, right? It's with the line managers. Get them out of their offices on the shop floor, looking at the team in their eyes and saying, your safety is the most important thing for me for the next 15 minutes. Let's talk about health and safety. And that's visible felt leadership, right? You feel that I'm being sincere. But what does that do? If you do stuff together like action items, immediate action items, etc., it creates trust between the line managers and the employees. And if you can do that and you build trust because you're doing action items together, then you move the culture forward. As the culture moves more and more forward, you need to drive the third aspect, which is the third most important item for me. It's employee involvement, right? Yeah, you've got them involved before, but the involvement has a gradual change from getting them just involved to why not get them leading certain projects or driving certain things, right? You can never absolve the responsibility. You cannot pass the responsibility from the line management to the employees, but there are lots of things we can do where we're using the eyes, the knowledge of the employees. And those programs in the most successful organizations are driven by leading indicators. So it's not just one leading indicator. You'd have leading indicators that drive risk management for L'Oreal, leading indicators that drive visibility felt leadership, and leading indicators that drive employee involvement and engagement. If you get that right, then you're on the right track.
Yeah, and I think the last point you mentioned, like having the employees like involved and like come up with also like maybe some improvements or like suggestions or something like that. They are involved in the process is something that is necessary to ensure that they buy in. Otherwise, they wouldn't, because it's like something that is, I mean, dropped from above them, and if you're not sincere, just I mean, it's just I mean, you are applying rules or like being just following compliance. Yeah, they wouldn't buy into it necessarily.
Exactly, and especially if it's been imposed.
Yeah,
There's nothing more powerful in changing culture than involvement, right?
yeah,
Working together. And we created a program a long time ago now called SIO, Safety Improvement Opportunity, where we're looking to use the eyes and ears of every single employee, managers as well as um, shop floor, looking to use the eyes of visitors, contractors, etc., to identify a safety improvement opportunity. The way it works, though, is when you look at how do you design something so you get visible felt leadership and employee engagement. And if you take just this simple example of identifying an improvement opportunity. So an employee sees something, he raises that to his manager, right?
yeah,
Which is good.
yeah.
The manager now has the obligation to manage that idea to conclusion. He cannot give it to EHS. He cannot give it to HR. He can't give it to maintenance. He
Okay.
can ask for their help, right?
Yeah,
So think about it from this point of view now. I've given you as my boss an improvement opportunity. You're now managing that to conclusion, maybe bringing in other people. I say, wow, my boss is pretty good. I raised an opportunity or something and he managed it. I visibly, he gave me feedback. And I don't care if you got EHS to do it or whatever. I
yeah,
just see you as being the visible leader. But you also need to be able to turn around to me and say, if you were the boss, and say, look, Malcolm, I've really looked at that. We've had a chat and it's not possible. So thank you very much. But this time the feedback is we're not doing anything. That's okay as well, right? Because we
yeah,
can't do everything. Now, if you do that, you again create trust and confidence between the manager and the associates.
yeah,
The associate feels his ideas are valued, so he'll come to you with more ideas. It creates psychological safety. I mean,
yeah,
it's win-win. When we designed the program, we asked the question, what is the role of the leader? What is the role of the EHS? What is the role of the associate? And what are the leading KPIs you need to success? Just to finish off on this, right?
uh,
The journey has led us through that we have on average, about 60,000 safety improvement opportunities that have come up per year. globally, right? And at corporate level, which is where the influence on the KPIs come, I require 90% plus closure of all action items. Because if all these these improvement opportunities were coming to me, right,
Yeah.
and I was closing 10% of the ones that were coming to me as a manager, where's my credibility?
Yeah, I mean, it's
So
just creating a
set that
backlog of things. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And also, you're going to say, "Well, I've given you 10 things, and you've only done one. I'm not going to give you any more." So it has a negative impact. So looking at the design of even such a small program, I follow at corporate level
Uh,
every single site worldwide, the number of safety improvement opportunities and the closure rate. If the site gets to less than 80% closure rate towards the end of the year, alarm bells. And we have talks with them because it's fundamental. It's
fair.
fundamental. But as a result, those 50, 60,000 safety improvement opportunities
Huh?
are actually improvement opportunities before there's even been a near miss, a first aid case, or an accident. Therefore, we're also at the same time making where we work safer.
Yeah. It's
Win-win,
what's
win-win.
the what
And,
kind of
but the companies that do say, "Oh, we have a similar thing, it's called hazard reporting." I I promise you, in the majority of them, the people that resolve them and manage them are the EHS professional, the
yeah.
EHS manager.
That's the most, I mean, common thing. Yeah. Like
Yep. But then it
push the
fails.
obvious.
It doesn't meet the objective of creating visible felt leadership and
Yeah.
employee engagement. It's delegation to EHS. Add things to the big list.
Yeah.
It's not the way
And AHS is
my
like
experience.
they're swarmed and thing like a lot of things to handle. So yeah,
Well,
you're probably like your closure rate will be like way lower.
yeah, and then the system is not as effective. So
Yeah.
it's it what a lot of the EHS professionals maybe don't do, and from what I've seen, they don't think about the design of the tools they put in place, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a good EHS professional for me doesn't buy stuff off the shelf, right? He modifies things off the shelf, or he creates things based on his experience
Yeah.
that is fit for purpose, fit for the company and the culture where he works. You don't just buy something off the shelf and think it's gonna be a silver bullet.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think there is like a yeah magical like cure for like problems. Like it has to be molded to fit the
So
the reality that you have on the shelf.
oh, yeah, I totally agree. But let me ask you a question because you've interviewed a few people, you've been around a little bit. Why do you think so many safety professionals buy things directly off the shelf?
I think
Or they bring a consultancy in to deploy a program that
yeah.
they don't own? Why do you think
Yeah.
that happens?
Well, I think there are two folds. Like first thing is maybe they are not well as like versed in like technology, so they don't fully understand it, and they see like big names in the space, like and they want to follow other organizations that have been using it. So that's one. And the other thing is like, yeah, bringing consultants and all like that will shift, I guess, the responsibility to consultant, I guess, some of it. So the EHS person, like I did my best. I tried to use like get this tool, which is like the best of the line, but that's not working for us. So I think it's something between two.
But and maybe they think they're buying a silver bullet, and like you said, if you buy something off the shelf and it doesn't work, well, it's not your fault,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And just to let you know, I mean, I've been in L'Oréal now 16 years, okay, and putting in place a certain number of programs. Not a single program has been deployed by a consultant or somebody from extern. It has been created for L'Oréal, by L'Oréal, and deployed by L'Oréal. And that is also very motivating, huh?
yeah.
You've involved your EHS senior leaders, you've involved the site people, you've built something together. Now, we bring consultants in to help us develop the programs, like
Mm,
small one-man band consultants, and it's been our secret. I can't tell you how much I probably saved L'Oréal by
probably a
that
lot of
method.
money.
And if then somebody says, well, you probably haven't got the best results in the world or the right results in the world, I would say let's have a discussion, because I think we've got a good level of culture. We do some good benchmark stuff, and our level of performance, depending on what your criteria is for performance, and
Yeah.
we wouldn't say it was lost time, right? Is not too bad.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So, as the global VP of EHS at L'Oreal, so how like you maintain the consistent safety level across different sites? Like you only you mentioned that like only like in Montreal you have 3 sites. So like I imagine like all over you have a lot of sites. So how do you make sure that everything is up to standard?
just to give you a flavor, so 100,000 employees, okay,
Yeah.
41 factories,
Wow.
80 warehouses. I can't tell you how many administrative sites, 3,000 stores, shops,
Yeah.
right? So it's massive. First thing is you have to realize that it's not the same tools and methods and approach to the different functions. The way you deal with operations, manufacturing is not the same way that you would deal with maybe research and development, research
Yeah.
and innovation, or a store.
Yeah.
That's the first thing.
Definitely.
However, what we do, because when it comes to people and lives, there is no difference in the value of a life wherever you are in the world, whether it's China, Canada, India, Antarctica, right?
Yeah.
The value is the same. Although sometimes when you visit some of the countries, you would think it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
So we
Sadly.
globalize, right? When it comes to high risk management, when it comes to those activities where we can have a fatality or a major event, I globalize. So, for example, have you heard of NFPA?
Yeah. National
Right, so
Fire. Yeah.
for National Fire Prevention Authority or
Yeah.
Association,
Yeah.
the American
US.
system. It's actually quite an expensive thing to put in place. There's lots of standards, right?
Yeah.
That is our standard worldwide. You want to build something in China, you want to build something in Australia, NFPA is my standard, right? So I standardize and globalize on certain things. Have you heard of the ATEX requirements?
Yes, it's like for like explosive like areas, etc. So like
Yeah. And the ATEX is actually a European Union
yeah,
requirement, right? In the US, we talk a lot about either PSM or um, NEC 500, NEC 505, right?
yeah,
ATEX is my minimum standard for control of flammable and explosive atmospheres. It's way higher than most legislation,
it is.
especially maybe India, Sri Lanka, right? US, Brazil, right?
Yeah,
And we put the money to put ATEX minimum standard in every country worldwide,
yeah.
right?
So that's a quite an investment because like I know like for even for testing the smallest like let's say you want to certified equipment as an ATEX, like kind of certified equipment, like there is a lot of testing. It's expensive. So
It is. But if we want to take out human error,
yeah,
right? And normally with ATEX, I mean, this is a bit technical, right? We have what we call zoning. We look around the vessel and we say, okay, to what extent do we need to have special equipment?
yeah,
We zone the room. Why? Because we take out the risk of human error, human people making mistakes. If the whole room, rather than the vessel plus 1 meter around the vessel, is
yeah,
ATEX, we do the room. And you're right, it costs a lot of money. But the impact on human life, if it ever goes wrong in L'Oreal, and we've never had a major explosion as a result, touch wood, right?
yeah,
But the impact on lives is potentially very serious. Like we we cannot have that kind of thing happening. The impact on the families and all the rest of it. It's not about L'Oreal here. It's about changing the lives of people and their families because we didn't do our job right. So,
yeah.
and we do other things as well at the same way. So, our visible felt leadership programs are global,
Oh,
right? We adapt within we allow flexibility and adaptation within the frame. So, for example, if something that we've designed with all the teams works worldwide but doesn't work in Mexico, right?
yeah,
We allow them to adapt within the frame so that it works locally. We're not rigid and saying this is the only way kind of thing. So you need to be flexible to local culture, which I think is very powerful and very, very important. And this is how we achieve the culture that we do, and we put people and their health and safety in the center of what we do. Do we always get it right? No, right? Do I have some challenges outside of manufacturing? Yes, with salespeople and all the rest of it. And I mean, do you have a driving license?
Yes.
And I know this is going out to public, but do you uh, always respect the speed limit?
I mean, I try my best, but sometimes like I mean, you don't like it. I don't know, doze off or like wonder, like your brain wanders. So.
But it's because we're human, right? And
Yeah,
what drives us, whether we're trying to save time, we're distracted. I mean, we're not perfect. So, people sometimes don't follow the rules on purpose, right? Sometimes they do. But we need to have that kind of flexibility to say to understand that people are human. And how do we try and limit the potential impact of being human, making a mistake, doing something wrong?
yeah,
If the result of that is just a little small cut or something like that,
yeah,
something reversible, okay, that's not good. But what we really have to do is saying, oh, we need to prevent and make sure we design for that human aspect, right?
yeah,
By making sure that we don't we design out the potential for serious irreversible injury or death, right?
yeah,
And that you need to design out. Yep, we don't very often, and companies are not prepared sometimes to put the money behind it, to put the safety by design we're talking about
yeah,
here, right?
yeah, yeah,
But the way we do it at L'Oreal is by having that, the solidness of good risk management, right? Plus the idea of having the culture and applying it across the world with flexibility for cultural differences. India, France, Brazil, US, they're different cultures, different ways of seeing risk. But we make sure we're top down on making sure we don't get those fatal type of injuries.
yeah,
The rest of it, we give flexibility within a frame through our risk management programs. Plus, we then have what we call the visible felt leadership and getting the managers out on the shop floor, being interested in people and their safety and their health and their well-being, physical and mentally.
yeah,
And, you know, you can have a conversation with everybody wherever you are in the world. And it doesn't matter whether you work in a shop or whether you work in a factory.
mm, yeah,
Uh, it sounds complicated, but at the end of the day, the success is by creating visible felt leaderships and connection, contact points with people to talk. It's a conversation.
yeah. Thing.
Does that answer the question? Because I went on a bit and then I digressed when I asked you
I
about speed limit and
think
stuff like that. It's complex, huh?
it is. It is a very complex thing, and always like ask it and then get a different answer. But like, buddy, like everyone is like trying their best to make sure that employees, the collaborators that they have are protected, but different approaches. But I think whatever works for the company and the context, and you mentioned something that is very important. Culture, culture also has an impact. It's like you need to allow some flexibility. It doesn't have to be a like fully rigid system, but needs to adapt to the culture of the, let's say, the factory, where the factory is. So because there people, how people perceive risk is different from culture to culture.
Completely. And in some respects, you have to a successful system that's a global system has to allow for that as well, and that's why you
Yeah,
need flexibility, adaptability within a frame. The thing is, though, when you talk to different people from different industries, and I like to benchmark and network, what you'll find is that when you deep dig down, we're all working on the same things. We're all working on risks
yeah,
management. We're all working on getting managers out on the shop floor. We're working on permits and stuff like that. All these things happen. And the thing that pulls it all together that is common to everybody is people. right? We all have people, and people have their limitations. You and I, we make mistakes because we're human, right? And it doesn't matter what industry we're in. The question is, when we do something, we make a mistake or we make an error, hopefully we're not doing it on purpose, right? What is the impact of that gonna be? Am I gonna be injured or is somebody else gonna be injured? And then sometimes it's just luck, right? You were stood someplace and something fell from a spanner fell from at height, and
Yep.
it just missed you. But if you'd have been slightly the other way, it'd have hit you on the head.
Yeah.
There's all these things that play into it, and it's our profession is one of the most complex professions to be in,
It is. Yeah.
but it also has a lot of remarkable leaders that I often think our profession is underestimated for the leadership because you the people that work within L'Oréal in health and safety, they're dealing with senior managers, the plant manager, contractors,
Yep.
regulatory people, the shop floor people, the clean. They're dealing with everybody, and they have to change their style of management and influencing as a result. I don't know another profession in the world that has all those leadership skills like ours do,
Yeah.
yet very often we're seen as experts, and I
Yeah.
think that's wrong.
Yeah. Definitely a lot of hats to wear, like depending on
Oh,
who you're talking to.
oh,
Yeah.
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 Oh, and don't
So
forget we need to be a coach and a leader as well, huh?
yeah, pretty much. And so like what are the most like frequent risks that you encounter in the like industry? And how you guys are doing dealing with them?
The most frequent risk or hazards, I mean, like any industry, we take raw materials, we transform them into cosmetics, right? Um, whether it be or perfume or whatever, that's what we do.
Yeah.
But in that process, you subject raw materials to maybe heat, pressure, vacuum, you know, some of it's flammable in nature, etc. So from one aspect, we have those risks associated with handling materials and making product that goes
Yeah.
onto the market. We also have the challenges as a result of that of the things like ergonomics,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Manual handling, etc. We have high risk activities like working at height, confined space entry. So all of those, we would have lockout, tag out, hazardous energies, contractors.
Remember.
We also have people that are driving, right, for work, whether you're on company business, whether you're sales marketing or whether you're just going to a conference, right?
Yeah.
So there's that aspect to manage. There's the aspect of travel as well, travel safety when you're traveling to in a couple of weeks' time, I'm coming to the US, so there's that aspect. But that tends to be we have another department which is our security department that tends to manage that. We then have challenges on, we've mentioned driving. Um, There's also mental health challenges as well. Anybody that works anywhere, I mean, there's a certain workload, and sometimes, people. What I think a lot of companies are going in the right direction, but not quite there. Is how do I take into consideration all the challenges that you're having at home? I don't know when you come to work in the morning. Have you been up all night with your children? You've maybe been to hospital. You've maybe not slept. You then come to work, and I expect you to perform as usual. Well, I think we're on the way to changing that,
Mm.
especially with what we're doing about what we call in L'Oréal, like mental well-being, mental wellness. We're on the way of changing that, but we're not quite there. But we're a long way. We've come a long way since the 1960s, the 1970s, when it was all right for people to work on the top of skyscrapers without any harness and any protection. The value of human life, we're on the right track, and this is a constant evolution. And our role as health and safety professionals at the end of the day is to make sure that people go home
Yeah.
safely, healthily, and why not maybe a little bit better than when they came to work? That we should think a bit more positive and just keep them as whole. I mean, if somebody goes home and they do ergonomics in a different way, or they do something from a manual when they pick up boxes, they remember what they've learned and pick it up correctly from a manual handling point of view, then that's even better.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And I hope like companies are taking more and more of an initiative to like improve mental health because it is a very important thing. And I think as you mentioned, like like in the previous decades, it was like totally ignored. Uh, I my background is I'm an industrial engineer. Like I guess we had studied like the early manufacturing days. Like I mean, people like workers are like just a statistic there. I mean, if productivity decreases something, like you treat it as like a machine or something. So I don't think that's fair. It's not good. You need to treat people as people. They have feelings. They like that. Yeah, and that's a huge factor in their productivity, but also in their like safety as well. So
Exactly, and you know, I if you've been all up all night with your daughter, when you go to work in the morning, you can't leave all that at the entrance to the factory. It's part of you, and we need to have an approach that is a little bit more of a total, a whole person, whole life approach,
yeah,
right? And I think we're getting there compared to where we've come from, right? I think we're in the right direction. The world's not perfect, right? And unfortunately, the other thing about having human beings, we do sometimes take advantage of other people, right? And we're very self-interested in what we're trying to achieve. And but I think it's slowly changing. I mean, I'm seeing people now that come to work and the boss sees the low level signal changes in them, something's not quite right. They'll have that they'll have a chat with them and, maybe say, "Okay, well, today, maybe you should stay in the office, do some safety," or whatever it is, right?
yeah,
It's not everywhere because it's very individual, dependent,
yeah.
but I think we're on the right track. I think we've come a long, long way, and COVID has definitely helped.
Yeah, it did. Like changed a lot of things about like the way we perceive work and the work like the workplace as well. So yeah.
Yeah,
Uh yeah, I guess it's a good segue because I mean COVID we use a lot of technologies to I mean like to because of the restrictions of not being able to go to work. Now we like we're using AI more and more. So so yeah, like are you using any AI tools for like in the L'Oreal for like workplace safety and or like have you had any personal experience with them? Have you used them in like um any workflow that you are currently doing? So if you can
with,
tell us a little
if
bit.
yeah, and not a problem at all. So, this if we talk about what we call within L'Oréal next generation tools, right? So it's the whole shebang with AI, wearables,
Uh-huh.
exoskeletons, digitalization. So w we started, um, this side of COVID looking at digitalization, right?
Yeah.
In a lot more detail. And the problem is that there's so much we can do that we needed to focus on what added value, right? So we came up with a rule within L'Oreal in health and safety was we're looking at projects, digital projects that give time back to
Mm.
somebody,
Yeah.
right? So our first approach wasn't how do we look at data better or anything like that, right? It was if we put in a digital permit system, then we can save X hours from for the EHS professional and the manager, which can be used to do something else. So you have to set rules in order to prioritize. So we sort of did that, and we have a number of digital tools that help us with certain programs and certain initiatives that we have. But again, we have an approach of globalization because there's economy of scale.
Yeah.
And sometimes we find that sites are doing something, we look at it, we review, we bring the different regions of the world together, they make a decision and say, okay, this is the tool we deploy
Cool.
global. And we've done we were trying with exoskeletons for a while. Then we found there were so many different exoskeletons out there, and it's very easy to choose the wrong one. And sometimes some of these sales reps will sell you anything rather than the right tool. And if you get an exoskeleton wrong, it could actually end up doing more damage to your body than. So we put those under control quite quickly, but we do use exoskeletons. AI, we're a bit cautious about to start off
Mhm.
with. But saying that though, there was a startup organization that I helped developed the product offering for industry, right? So a bit, you could call it consultant. Obviously, it wasn't paid. I was doing it just to help them and interest, and they've sort of developed some good stuff. We're currently looking at use of AI with respect to m management of, I'm gonna say, pallets in racks.
Okay.
Are they in the rack correctly, right?
Uh-huh.
Are they filmed correctly? Is the pallet broken? Those kind of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
The challenge we're having with AI internally is privacy. Right?
Okay.
There is
Yeah.
a lot of employees, and I understand it completely, are not comfortable with being watched, and if they've done this wrong, that wrong, or this right, that right. You know, with the privacy rules and all the rest of it, they can be identified. It's on film. It becomes quite complicated, and I know that some of the companies are evolving, but we are still looking at using it for managing forklift pedestrian safety in a way that renders the individual anonymous, right?
Uh,
Because we have a rule in L'Oreal, we have 5 meter minimum distance between forklifts
okay.
and pedestrians.
Yeah.
So forklift to forklift, pedestrian to pedestrian, 5 meter minimum, or a physical barrier. So it can help us with that. We haven't yet fully got into the process of saying, okay, um, are we going to use AI in data analysis, accident investigation, analysis? And the reason being is when we've looked in depth, we feel that our accident investigations can be better, right?
Okay.
And if you put rubbish into an AI system, it will
Okay.
give you rubbish out.
Yeah.
So in some respects, you've got to make sure that the data is solid and it's of good
Yeah.
quality. And that's where we are at the moment. We're actually, believe it or not, upgrading our accident investigations, making them robust, being better categorization on a global
Oh,
scale, and then we'll see whether it's worth
yeah.
actually investing in AI. I do know one company that has invested and did the review,
Uh,
and the AI system came out and said, "Yep, reviewed everything. You need to have these were the three decisions, if I remember right.
uh-huh.
Management needs to be more on the shop floor. You need to get more employee engagement, and you need to do more training."
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine how much they paid for that advice.
Wow. Yeah. That's the basic of the basics, I guess.
Well, so so this question. So I think we're on that journey.
Yeah.
We're not going to jump in and you know and be. I'm going to say be in the front of the pack.
Uh-huh.
We know we've still got work to do on getting the data right. We've got some
Yeah.
good digitalization in place, and we'll use these tools at the right time when it's right for us in our evolution. Not too soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Understood. And you mentioned like privacy issues with the video analytics. So like are there like talks with it? Like I don't know if you guys have unions or not, but like is there like talks with them regarding uh the privacy? Like what are their concerns and like are you guys looking into ways to make sure that those concerns there are I mean uh
Yeah, this
like yeah, checked.
yeah, no, it's a very good question, and this is a big challenge. So we're in 147 different countries,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
The privacy rules are not the same in different countries.
Is
So
wait.
it's very difficult to do a corporate level directly. So what we do in these kind of instances, we have to go through what we call um, IT design authority. We have to, and then it's almost like we'll be a deployment country by country, right?
No.
In some countries, they don't have privacy laws, right?
Yeah.
Some are very, very tight. And so it's a very difficult question to answer because you've almost got to do it country by country.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But if you ask me the question, well, so if we were going to do it country by country, how would we do it? And the only way you can do it is by involving the unions, the employees, open, transparent discussions, and it might take a long time, right?
Uh-huh.
But everybody has to would have to accept it and be at ease with it. And
Yeah.
if a single site said, no, we don't like this, we're not comfortable with it for these reasons, then you can't force it. I think the days are gone when you force things on people. We have to work in collaboration.
Yeah. Make total sense. And I've talked to other organizations, and they have like similar, I guess, uh, like ways. Like for example, they are deploying, or testing at one site where like privacy laws are like like lesser, so they could see like detect that learning and like show it to other sites where maybe the privacy laws are like a little bit stricter, so like they can see like and try to find like a middle ground approach for like weighing the benefits versus the cons and trying to find something middle ground. So yeah.
One of the things that we're doing is, part of this better data for accident investigations, right?
Yeah.
When our sites, no matter where in the world, fill in the accident investigation form, goes into our platform that we developed, etc. And then there's somebody in my team that sort of reviews things, but we can get trend analysis and all the rest of it. One of the things that we don't do, we don't ask for a person's name.
Yeah.
We have nothing that can identify the person, because all that matters is that we get the information so we can learn,
Yeah.
right? I'm not bothered what the name of the person is, what their gender is, what their age is, or whatever. I'm interested, though, what day of the week may be, what part of the body was injured, um, what was the output of the root cause analysis, right? Now, if there's anything to be done that needs the person's name, then that will be local, I imagine, on the site, and it'd be dealt with by HR using local privacy laws. So a company can avoid these issues if it just turns around and says, okay, ask yourself the question, do I need personal information?
Yeah.
And you
Or
don't
like
for an
for this
accident
case,
investigation.
probably not.
Exactly. Well, for an accident investigation,
Yeah.
if you want to learn from the accident rather than blame an individual or whatever, you don't need the name. At corporate level, you don't need the name.
Yeah. Yeah. You just need the road that like the data about the event itself, not who did or like who was involved with it. So
Exactly. Or the names of witnesses even or anything like that. You
yeah.
just don't. So sometimes some of these systems, you put the name in, right?
Uh-huh.
And if you design, and when we designed our system, we said, okay, we don't need this.
Yeah.
So what do we need?
Yeah. It's a very good approach. So yeah, you received, I think, an award from the Royal Society of Prevention of Accidents, and also
Yeah,
Corporate Influence Award. So, what are the key factors or initiatives contributed to receiving these recognitions?
I think, wow, this is, it's a difficult question, this, because it feels as if I'm talking about myself here kind of thing. So I'm a little bit embarrassed to do so. I think on the influencer award, that's a great recognition, but I think it's because I'm a great believer in the power of networking, right? I
Yeah.
I network with approximately 40 of my equivalents in other organizations, and between you and I, when I have a challenge or a problem, or I want to put in a new program or some more training or new training on a subject, I just reach out to my network.
Yep.
And the network I've, that we've established and the trust we've established, we share. We share with each other. So if somebody asks me, or what are you doing on forklift truck management?
Yep.
I send them all my stuff, right? Because if we can help each other through the power of networking to save one life or to help another company develop a program, obviously modified to the needs, that's fine. So I think one of the reasons maybe I was identified was the networking that I do, and I've done the networking for a long, long time, and I think if I influence or I'm influencing or being influenced as well, it's through these networks. So I would like to think it was for that, but you'd have to ask Rosper. And what was the other one was the Guardian Angel Award.
Yeah.
And I think that was because within L'Oréal, we created a program called Safe at Work, Safe at Home.
Okay.
And that's all about exporting our culture of keeping people safe, well and healthy into our families, local communities, and other companies. One of the reasons we network, and it's not just me, there are other people within organizations, it's part of our DNA. We share everything we do. We ask for nothing in return because if it's useful to you, you can have it. Why not? You might just save one life.
Yeah.
So we do that. We within the program Safe at Work, Safe at Home as well. Most L'Oreal employees will have received a fire extinguisher or first aid training, not to be a first aider at work, but to give them a life gift of being able to save the life of their child or their loved one when they need it. I mean, I'm assuming if I ask you, are you a first aider?
Yeah.
So if you ask somebody, if you'd have said no, then we would have had a discussion about, imagine your child is choking.
Yeah.
Are you going to really, what would you do if you dial 911 and wait for the ambulance to come?
Yeah.
Right.
That's
You need to be empowered.
yeah.
Unthinkable,
Yeah.
unthinkable.
It is.
And so this idea of giving to the employees so that they can make a difference. When we do training, electrical training or manual handling training, at the end, we like our people to say at the end, and at home, how can you apply this at home? It doesn't mean they have to, but it just gets them to
That's
that a little bit.
That's a very useful skill to have. Like I mean, I worked in oil and gas, and we had to do a lot of trainings and like safety inductions and safety trainings, especially when we go like offshore. So
Yep.
that's where I guess I had those kind of trainings. But it is very important to have those skills because you never know like what happens. Like you could use those skills to save family member, friend, or like even like sometime hacking on the streets. Like see
Exactly,
thing.
exactly.
Yeah,
So we've probably, I mean, I don't do it personally, but the sites give out fire extinguishers, right? I'm not saying every L'Oreal employee has got one. I'd like to think they have, but I can't guarantee it. So a fire extinguisher costs about $15, $20,
yeah,
right? And you're right with what you just said. You only want one person to put out living in an apartment or living in a house to have taken that fire extinguisher they got from L'Oreal and put out a fire, then it makes it all worth it. And between us and everybody listening, we've had 2 people worldwide come in and say one person lived on a 3rd floor apartment flat, of a whole load of flats in the central
yeah,
Paris, 6 stories high. She had a fire in her kitchen. She She used the L'Oreal fire extinguisher to put fire out. If she hadn't have done, then maybe the whole block of flats would go.
yeah, probably.
We've had another lady in Arkansas who, 4th of July, fireworks went into the house. The house set fire, but her mother was in there and she was 90 odd. Mother didn't know what to do. She just froze, right? She went in with and she got a L'Oreal fire extinguisher. She had not a fire extinguisher before. She put the fire out. I mean, you only need a couple of stories like that, and it makes it worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
You It makes it worth it. So, and then finally, the other thing we do is we have a program called Keeping Kids Safe, and we've gone into Brazil, China, South Africa, India twice now, and um, Indonesia. Right? We go into schools, we go into slums, we take education to children to teach them about being safe, healthy, the basics. We teach we talk to the teachers, we talk to the parents, because if we can make a difference in the life of a child, right, or a parent, right, then it's all worth it. You never know who we've impacted or who we may have saved. I think in the last few years we've connected with over 4,000 families, children, etc., in slums, in orphanages, in schools. We even have a school in the north of India near Chandigarh. Uh, why shouldn't companies? Why shouldn't we try and make a difference to people's lives in these areas. And under the Safe at Work, Safe at Home program, we also do that as well. And it's so enriching. Now, to be selfish, selfish isn't the right word, but when you take your employees in to these kind of, and the teaching children, the smiles, and all the rest of it, they feel as if they're making a difference.
Yeah.
It gives them a bigger sense of purpose than just working safely for L'Oréal.
Yeah.
And what happens is it changes the way they think, and they become better ambassadors in L'Oréal as well as outside L'Oréal, and it's a win-win. Honestly, you know, the Safe at Work, Safe at Home, Safe at Work program that we delivered we created in 2017. There is no roadmap, no KPIs. There's just a dream, a vision, and a logo, and it's the most successful program we've ever put in place in L'Oréal. But I think we had to be ready with everything else. We couldn't have avoided doing the risk management and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
We had to be in a certain stage in our cultural development. But between us, it's amazing.
Yeah. I think it's bringing a lot of good to this world and having an impact on a lot of people. So, congrats on.
You only have to change what to save one child's life, and it's all worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Uh, and
So how many fire extinguishers have you got at home? Tell me.
so right now in this current house I don't have one, and I used to have one in my car actually, but I need to buy one though.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
because
get you. I'm gonna get you to agree to this o- on this podcast.
I'll
5
try to get
phones a day. You haven't got one, so go out and buy one. And it's the kind of thing we forget about. It's easy enough to forget. We move house or there's things that change.
yeah,
The last one's out of date. Go buy yourself one this afternoon,
yeah. I'll
and and
definitely
and
do that.
and post it. Do me a favor. Post a picture of it on LinkedIn.
All right, will do. I'll tag you. Hey, be like,
Deal.
thanks to Malcolm. And
Wait.
so finally, what's the key message or advice for upcoming EHS professional?
Yeah. Um, I've been thinking about this, and the first thing I would say, is network, right? Create your networks of like-minded people working in your profession, people that you can ask questions to, etc.
Mhm. Yeah.
Secondly, don't forget where you've come from. Don't forget your roots, right? I came from, I would say, quite a uh, I'm going to say poor background, and the the journey I've been on, I feel still even today, I can go out and talk to anybody, right?
Mm.
I can talk to whether it be the cleaner, whether it be the kitchen staff, whether it be the CEO, right?
Mhm.
I mean, and I think part of that is because I haven't forgotten where I've come from or the importance or the lessons that I've had from my my parents. And I think if there was a third one, I would I would say invest in yourself. So invest in, you know, um, continuous professional development.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
very important.
get yourself qualifications. Like if you're in the United States, I don't know about Canada, but there's like a CSP, Certified Safety Professional. Invest in yourself, but not just as a safety professional, but as a leader, right? So develop your understanding of psychology, how people work, about leadership, etc. And in that way, you're preparing yourself for the future, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Well,
they're the three things I would suggest.
yeah. Well, I think it's a very solid advice, and thanks a lot for for being with us. You shared the trove of knowledge and wisdom. Thanks a lot, Malcolm,
You're
and
welcome.
thanks for our listeners. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.